Hello, I usually don't make videos this often, but today I just have to make a video because it's such a big deal for Blender, I think. Do you remember back in August 2025 when Andrew Price posted this video where he's comparing these denoising technologies for Blender? So the first thing we're seeing is the current implementation of optics, which is quite laggy, and then he switches to a custom build that uses DLSS, and it's so much faster. Look at this, super laggy with the optics denoiser, and then with DLSS, it is really smooth. And ever since this video was posted, I've been like checking in on DLSS, when is it coming, what is happening to this mysterious, extremely powerful technology. But we no longer have to wonder because it's possible to compile your own version and make like an experimental build where this technology is actually working in Blender right now. So in this video, we're going to see what the hype is all about, what is this denoiser good at, what is it bad at, and then at the end of this video, I'm going to try and answer the very difficult question, when will we actually get this in Blender? Okay, so to use NVIDIA's DLSS Ray Reconstruction viewport denoiser in cycles, we need to compile our own version. My brain is not big enough to do that, but luckily I got some help from this amazing Reddit user bbcool2002. He posted this demo a couple of days ago where his NVIDIA RTX 3090 graphics card is running this DLSS in real time on his computer. So without bbcool2002, his Instagram handle is bbcoolcg. Without him, this video would not have been possible, so thank you so much. Okay, look at that. This is the custom DLSS build for Blender. This is not possible to download or anything. You have to compile it yourself. So let's start out with the classic Classroom scene. So first of all, I'm using cycles and I'm having the device set to GPU compute. And my GPU is an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4090. This will only work on NVIDIA GPUs, not AMD or Intel, unfortunately. Okay, so now let's set this to the rendered view. And now this is super noisy. So let's enable the open image denoiser first. Look at that. It is better, but it's moving a lot. It's kind of alive a little bit. You can see you have these, it's kind of updating a lot. And then you have optics, which is pretty similar, but we have some artifacts in the ceiling here. And now let's have a look at DLSS. Okay, so I'm going to set this to DLSS. Look at that. Look at that. That is crazy. You can move around this scene and it's like you're playing a game. It feels like it's baked, you know? It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. That is just wild. I've never seen the Classroom scene run this fast. It's like an Eevee render, but it is cycles. So here's the noisy version, just for comparison. And then again, here is DLSS. Look at that. That is absolutely crazy. And it even works with the compositor. So if you enable the compositor with some glow and chromatic aberration, look at that. Really impressive. Okay, let's check out another example, the Barbershop scene, which is another Blender classic. So here we are in the Barbershop scene. I'm going to set it to rendered view. Okay, so now we're in rendered view, and this scene is more noisy than the Classroom scene. It has more noise, it's significantly slower, and this is without any denoising. So let's first try the open image denoise. Actually pretty good. Honestly, actually pretty good. And then let's try optics. Maybe a little bit slower than open image denoise. Also a little bit more blurry, I think. Okay, and then let's try DLSS. Nope. This is just not working. And the reason why this is not working is because there is volumetrics in this scene. So I did some testing earlier, and here you can see there's this huge fog element here. So if we hide this, and then we go back in here, and then we set it to render view again, now you can see that with DLSS, this scene actually works. Look at that. Okay, so if we fly around here, it is lagging a little bit. Oh, that's so stupid. I expected to see myself in the reflection there. That's how realistic it is. Okay, that's good. Look at how you can just move up close to the mirror here, and you can see the entire scene. That's crazy. This Barbershop scene is really heavy. Also, keep in mind that I'm doing a screen recording of myself and this video. So that means that my viewport performance is already a little bit slower. But the fact that DLSS still makes it work is pretty impressive. But if I press Alt-H now and bring back the fog element, you can see DLSS just completely breaks. It doesn't work anymore. I'm trying to move the viewport here, but it doesn't allow me. It's like 0.5 frames per second, basically. Yeah, it does not work with volumetrics. Okay, let's have a look at some other examples. Here's a scene with just a huge mirror surface. So let's set this to rendered view. This is using assets from Polygonic, I think. So if we first try the denoise with open image denoise, actually looks pretty good. But if you try and move closer to the tree here, you can see that these leaves, they do not want to be rendered. I'm moving my viewport now and it's super slow. Yeah, look at that. This is quite slow. If we just disable the denoise altogether, it's actually pretty responsive. Open image denoise does just not like being up close with these branches here. Yeah, let me enable the denoising again. Let's try and move around. It's literally just almost not moving at all. Yeah, and then let's try optics. It works okay if you're far away, but the second you get closer, it just becomes very, very slow. Very sluggish. Okay, and now let's try this scene with DLSS. So I'm gonna set the DLSS. Look at that. Now it's smooth far away, and if we zoom in, it's also really fast. Look at that. You can navigate around super smoothly. And then if we set this back to optics now, try and use the camera movement. Look at that. It's basically not possible. It just has this huge 1 second lag spikes. And then let's open image denoise. Yeah. So DLSS is just so good with this up close geometry. Now let's try DLSS again. Yeah, and this is with the compositor enabled, by the way. It's just some glare and some chromatic aberration. So yeah, DLSS wins this test actually. Okay, let's see some more comparisons. We have a scene with some subsurface scattering. You can see this is a very noisy object. If I disable the compositor here, you can see inside here, very, very noisy. Super noisy. So subsurface scattering is notorious for having a lot of noise. So let's see what this looks like denoised. First, we're going to check out the open image denoise. Quite slow. I think we have maybe 1 frames per second here, maybe 1.2 frames per second. It's very chunky and very stuttery. Optics looks like this. Pretty much the same performance as open image denoise. And then we have DLSS, which looks like this. Absolutely smooth. That is very impressive. That is so cool. And I think it also handles subsurface scattering very well. That is really impressive to see this working so well in real time. But now I want to show you something. If I move this around, look at this. It doesn't really hold up with any motion. There's a lot of ghosting here and it just doesn't really work. This is with DLSS. But if I set this to optics and I move it around, it is razor sharp. And also for open image denoise, there is no ghosting either. So if you have static objects in your scene, if you have a scene that is just completely static like this, you will see a major viewport improvement if you're using DLSS instead. Look at this. Yeah, this is with DLSS and now it's wild. But the second you start moving things around, you get this weird ghosting and it can be quite distracting actually. Okay, another example. So here we have a scene with a police car and some trees and some sunlight. So if I set this to rendered view, we have this low sunlight here. This is the noisy view, quite noisy. And we do have a lot of trees in our scene. So if I zoom out, it becomes very noisy and very slow. So let's try and enable the open image denoise first. Okay, that is flickering quite a lot. And let's set it to optics. Also quite flickery. And then let's set it to DLSS. And that is, it's lagging in a way. And it's kind of smeary. I'm not sure how well this shows up. But this is one of the examples where we're starting to see the limitations of DLSS. And we can especially see it in the police car. So if we zoom in here, look at this. Here you can see that the window of this car, the reflections here aren't really good. Glass materials is just generally not looking very good in this. Here you can see you have these squares here. They are coming out of nowhere, I think. And then if you compare this to open image denoise, for example, now you can see that if you're loading this, you get actually reflections from the trees in the hood here. Yeah, the difference in this scene is not huge, but I think I would prefer using optics or open image denoise for this scene instead of DLSS. Because of how much the reflections are changing. I really care about reflections and I wouldn't want to look at these weird reflections when, for example, adding a camera and figuring out where the reflections of the trees are and stuff like that. But now I'm going to show you something extremely powerful about this scene. So if I disable these trees here, we only have the car with the sun. And then I also just turn off the sun. you can see that this car has some headlights. Look at this. Here you can see the headlights on the ground. They're kind of lighting it up. And this car is from Polygonic's traffic pack. And these cars are notorious for having a very noisy headlight system. So you can see if I'm disabling the denoising, it is extremely noisy, these headlights here. So if I set this to optics, for example, you can see that the headlights are very noisy. And if I set it to open image denoise, the headlights are quite noisy when I'm moving around. And then in DLSS, they are not noisy, but they're much weaker. You kind of need to wait for them to show up in a way. Look at this. Let's just sit here and wait for the samples to increase. Now you can see the quality is kind of increasing. But I mean, the accuracy is lower. So it feels very much like a compromise if you turn off the lights like this. Okay, let's have a look at another example. This is a cube simulation. So this is a shot from many years ago. It's a really fun one where you can kind of see this ball going through this rigid body simulation. And if I set this to render view now, this is what it looks like with no denoising. So you can see if I navigate around, there's a lot of noise in this area. As you can see here. So this will be exciting to see with the denoiser. So let's enable the denoising. Let's first do the open image denoise. It looks really good with a still image, but when you start moving around, it's flickering a lot right here, which is expected because that's where we had most of the noise. And then let's try optics. Still flickering a lot, maybe even less details than open image denoise. And then let's try DLSS. Look at that. That is phenomenal. There is absolutely no noise when you're moving around this scene. It's crazy. This is the most insane improvement so far, I think. Okay, once again, let's have a look at optics. It's not possible to navigate around this without flickering. And the same goes with open image denoise. But then let's have a look at DLSS. Bam. Super smooth. And the reflections also look really good. Okay, but now look at this when it's animated. This is where it falls apart, literally. You cannot see any of the details, and it looks like this ghost smudge mess. Very, very unpleasant and very difficult to understand what the motion in your scene is. Look at that. That's so difficult to just even understand what it looks like. And also the frame rate is quite low. So now if we set it to open image denoise, for example, the frame rate is the same, but there's no ghosting. So it's a lot sharper, and I think I would prefer looking at the animation using open image denoise. And also the same goes for optics. Here is also no ghosting, because that's a DLSS artifact. And for the record, in solid view, this is running at a rock steady 30 frames per second. So this is a cycles issue that is lagging. Yeah, here you can see it's also lagging a lot in the viewport. Okay, one more. This is the last one. So this is a glass object with a lot of refraction and light and indirect lighting and all that good stuff. So this looks very noisy without any denoising. So let's first try it with open image denoise. It's actually pretty good. The frame rate is a little bit low. Let's set it to optics. The image looks a little bit sharper. I think, I think the refractions look sharper in optics than open image denoise. When we move around, we still have a very low frame rate, very stuttery. And then let's try DLSS. And here you can see that this just doesn't work. We have way too much noise in the glass, and the animation is full with ghosting, and you have these weird square artifacts. And if you move around the scene, it is a high frame rate, but the glass shader is completely broken. So we cannot use DLSS for this scene. And also, one more thing, let's say you had a cube here instead, and it looks like this. That looks great, right? Now, if I add a volume scatter setup to this scene, you can see here, it just does not look very good. This is the DLSS implementation of volumetrics. Very, very ghosty and not very impressive. The ghosting is hanging for multiple seconds. But if you set it to optics, you have a slower viewport frame rate, but the fog looks good. Same goes with open image denoise. Slow frame rate in the viewport, but the fog works. So DLSS, really powerful, really fun to play around with, and it's just an amazing technology because, I mean, you have real-time viewport denoising that just looks like it's actually no noise there at all. It's amazing. But the problem is that this is just super restrictive right now. You can't really use this unless you have compiled your own Blender version, and it's just, how do you even get access to the technology, you know? So the question becomes, when will this be shipped with Blender? When will this be a part of Blender? And the answer to that is actually pretty sad. Because I looked at some of the documents. Here you can see you have the pull request. If you scroll down, you can see that Brecht von Lommel, the developer that made Cycles basically, he's working at Blender, and I think he's like the head of Cycles or rendering, I don't know. But he basically says this about the DLSS implementation that we have tested now. This will not work without the DLSS SDK, nor have we sufficiently verified the license compatibility from the Blender side. So there is not going to be an officially signed package build of this for now. That's pretty crazy. So the licensing of DLSS is so strict that Blender is not sure if it's possible to ship it with Blender. And there was also a meeting in the beginning of February with Brecht von Lommel from Blender and people from Intel and NVIDIA and AMD, and basically a bunch of rendering people had this meeting and they talked about NVIDIA DLSS. And while they were very impressed by the results from this denoiser, it might actually not be possible to bundle it with Blender because of the licensing. So yeah, we actually don't have a date for when DLSS will be coming, and the sad part is that it might actually never come. But I want to stay optimistic here, and I just want to say this. I think it's really good that this DLSS demo basically is so powerful, because that means that now the pressure is on to make some really good denoisers for Blender. So they say here that OpenImage Denoise 3 might be coming in 6 months or more. So that is expected to come with an improved high-performance denoiser, and it will work with all GPUs. So that is much better than this restrictive DLSS NVIDIA-only technology, I think. So yeah, we just have to wait, and now the denoise race has begun, I think. And I'm really excited about this, because looking at this project file here, I mean, I've never seen the Classrom scene run this smoothly in Blender before. It's really cool. So I'm just so excited about this technology and where it will take us in a few years. So yeah, that's a sneak peek on the DLSS technology. Pretty cool stuff. And I'm hoping that we'll get something like this in Blender soon. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.